Happy holidays, everybody, and hope everything is going well during the holiday season. Today's video is about Disneyland, or more specifically DisneySea. I went to the park this past Monday, and this is really the first time in about a week or so that I've had time to post material on it. So here we go. In Japan, there are two parks. There is Disneyland, and then there's DisneySea. Disneyland is basically a copycat of the LA Disneyland, and I've been told by several friends who have already done the whole Tokyo Disney scene that if you've already been to Disneyland in a different location elsewhere, you might as well just go to DisneySea, because Disneyland in Tokyo is not really anything impressive. In fact, it's even smaller than other parks. So I said, okay, let's go to DisneySea. And by the way, the reason that I was going to DisneySea was not just because I wanted to go, but because I had a special friend visiting from out of Japan. She's originally from Singapore. Her name's Annabelle. And we went to DisneySea together for most of the day, and then we had other friends join us later at night. And so we went to DisneySea. Now, there are two things that Japanese people will tell you about DisneySea. One, they serve alcohol, which they do. It's nothing hardcore. You can get beer. And two, they say DisneySea is for adults. And you're going to say that's a rather strange conundrum, because at least in the American perception, Disneyland is just for kids in general. Like, Disney is synonymous with childhood. But Japan, in particular, doesn't really take that view. So, when I went to DisneySea, this is my interpretation of what people meant by saying DisneySea is for adults. So, part one. DisneySea is extremely well built. And when I say that, I say, if there's one thing the Japanese people are good at, it's building sets, like theater sets and movie sets, and creating the fantasy world that you need out of plaster and plywood and glue and paint. They are exceptionally good at it. I think clearly better than Americans, because when you go to Disneyland, of course as a kid, Disneyland is super duper impressive. It just wows your mind. And then when you get older and as an adult, Disneyland is still pretty freaking impressive, but maybe you start to notice that the detailing and the work that is done on the physical structures of Disneyland may seem a little less marvelous, a little more childlike when you're an adult. In DisneySea, that's not the case. The specification of detail, the quality of the buildings, they are built for adult expectations. For instance, if you've looked at the pictures on Facebook, there is several pictures I took of Arabia Land, which is basically Aladdin Land, and you'll notice that several of these structures have the great Arabian decorated dome that has flowers and very intricate design, almost like paisley design. I mean, if you got up close to one of these domes, not a hair is out of place. I mean, everything is perfectly outlined as if it was a stencil, and the color is all equal, and the detail is crisp and neat and high quality, even to the more discerning, mature eye. That's what I'm trying to say. And, I mean, to go even further, the other really impressive structure in Tokyo DisneySea, for the movie The Journey to the Center of the Earth, they built a ride for it. And the exterior of the ride is this enormous volcano mountain range thing. I mean, literally, you guys. They took, like, this could be like a literal sized volcano in real life, and they made it out of plaster, and it looked very, very good. It had all of the rugged detail you'd expect of a volcano, and it had, some of the molten scars running down it. I mean, it was pretty cool. And so I think that is really what people are talking about when you go to DisneySea. And the other aspect, I think, besides the alcohol, is that when you go to eat, there's some very nice restaurants in DisneySea. I mean, seriously. When I say nice restaurants, in particular, Annabelle and I discovered this. Maybe it was at one time a working ship. They have a giant boat, almost cruise ship size, docked at DisneySea, and they have several restaurants in the cruise line, and the restaurants are very nice. It's the type of thing where you would wear a nice dress and some heels, and you would go for romantic, candle-lit dinner. It's that type of thing, and there's a grand piano in the background, and it's a classy place. That's what I'm trying to say. And I didn't mention this beforehand, but the other thing that Japanese people say about DisneySea is that tends to be for couples, and I can see why, because DisneySea, although it has rides and whatnot, it's very heavily focused on atmosphere and things to look at and things to walk around and see and places to eat. I mean, that's its emphasis. And even more so, DisneySea has a special ticket you can purchase for after 6 p.m. So it's really a hot spot for couples to go on their 7 p.m. Saturday night date, if you can believe it. So that is what I think DisneySea is meant for when people say it's for adults. On another note, DisneySea I really liked because in some ways it was like Disneyland Part 2. It brought to life other movies that are simply not in Disneyland. It has different sets. Like I said, it had Journey to the Center of the Earth. It had a whole section for Aladdin. It had another section for the latest Indiana Jones movie, so there was like an Aztec themed section of the park. It had another one that I think was attributed to Treasure Planet, and then what I loved the most, because it's like traditional Disney, the DisneySea park had a whole recreation of like the Little Mermaid, and they really built King Trident's castle to life size, and then on the inside of the castle you can go and diddle around, and there's even a bit of kiddie rides, and I thought that was pretty cool. So that was good, and you know, if you're going to Disneyland for rides, go to Disneyland, not DisneySea. DisneySea's not for rides, really. I mean, it has rides, but they're just not nearly as impressive for rides themselves as Disneyland. On a last note, when you go to DisneySea, you will see a very odd phenomena. There is this teddy bear that's famous in DisneySea, and it looks like this. So, you know, this teddy bear, it's everywhere, and literally you see people with teddy bears. You see women with like 10 of these teddy bears. You see guys with these teddy bears. You see couples who have a teddy bear. And you're starting to feel like you're in a realm of serial killers with the amount of teddy bears you're seeing. And so finally, towards the end of the day, we had a Japanese friend join us, and I asked her, I said, "Kay, why are there so many teddy bears? What is this teddy bear?" And she said, well, according to Mickey Mouse tradition, it was something Mickey gave Minnie in an old cartoon. That's apparently the thing. And apparently it was supposed to have been started in Disneyland, but let me tell you, going from Disneyland, LA Disneyland, from the age of 2 to 20, I have never seen this teddy bear. So I don't know where or when it started, but it's weird. And the story makes the whole having the teddy bear thing slightly less creepy, but the people who have like 10 of the teddy bears, like, I feel like they have a body somewhere in their basement. Oh, and lastly, since we went during Christmas time, it was very interesting to note the difference between countries and how much effort they went into Christmas. Because when you go to LA Disneyland during Christmas time, there is not 1 square inch of that park that's not decorated in Christmas. That park looks like Christmas threw up all over it, and it's wonderful. But in DisneySea, the entrance certainly had some decoration, but it was not Christmas explosion in DisneySea. Basically what I have to report, and I've taken the liberty of posting some videos that I took while I was in DisneySea. I figured that would be a few good little snippets for you guys to get maybe a slim idea of how spacious this park is. And yeah. Oh, and lastly, the other thing is that for some of the rides for DisneySea, you could clearly see how there was some copycatting going on, even some of the architecture. Because, like, when you first enter the park, it feels kind of similar to, like, New Orleans Land and LA Disneyland, where there's the big water bay, and then there's very charming apartment-looking buildings surrounding it. DisneySea had that effect. And the other thing that I noticed with DisneySea is they have their own Indiana Jones ride, and you know it's based on the last Indiana Jones ride, but it's almost the exact same as the Indiana Jones ride in LA. I mean, they used a slightly different giant snake and slightly different decorations, but for all intents and purposes, it was the same ride. Yeah. Okay, guys. That's what I have to report. See you.
Hey you guys, we are on the train to DisneySea, and we're on the train, and yes, those are Mickey windows and Mickey handles, and Annabelle, wave! Hi guys, that's Annabelle, she's visiting from Singapore, and we are on to DisneySea for the day, and I think we're passing the Disney Hotel through the windows. So check that out, it's huge. It's a little bit of a gloomy day, but as I like to say, I'd rather go to Disneyland a little too cold than a little too hot. You guys, we are now finally entering the park, and you can kind of see it, but yes, that's a volcano in the freaking park. A constructed, man-made volcano. And beautiful stage and scenery as always, and more to follow. Okay guys, we are in the Aladdin-themed park of DisneySea. Inside this giant blue building, you can't really see it, there's a giant carousel which we're going to go ride. And then I think this place over here is another ride, and this place is huge. Like, it may not look super spacious perhaps, but it's pretty big in person.